Hey everybody, welcome back to AURAM'S FORUM. I said in the last one I wasn't gonna actually call the show that, but that's what's happening now. So anyway, I'm back. We're talking about different thing this time, not about Bendis, hopefully. Wait, shit, actually this is a... Wait, we are talking about Bendis here, but not as much. Today we're gonna be talking about what's on the board. If you can't read it, you probably can't. I have bad handwriting. It says, should series have one writer, with no question mark. So just, should series have one writer? Basically what I mean here is, should a comic book series for a very long extended period of time have one writer attached to it? Or the larger question, should a character or a mythos in one company have the same writer for a long time? So let's get the Bendis out of the way. Bendis wrote Ultimate Spider-Man, the entirety of it. That's great. It's great. He wrote all the stuff, and it was good because, to hit on subjects of last video, he was working in his own universe where he didn't have to pay attention to continuity, and that's great. He kind of headlined the Ultimate Universe. It's his baby. It started with words that he wrote, and ended with words that he wrote, potentially? I don't know. It's unimportant. There's a cat by the tree right here, and she just got spooked. Anyway, so yeah, that's the Bendis part of this. The other Bendis part of this is how, with All New, All Different Marvel, I think is where it started, Bendis was kind of like Marvel's forefront runner. Anyway, boy, this one's a mess. This is the second episode, and it's the worst one so far. Anyway, Bendis kind of pushed All New, All Different Marvel. He headlined it, is what I'm trying to say. He had Iron Man under his belt. He had, which was the headlining title. He was gonna write Civil War 2. He had a bunch of other books, and now he's kind of just subjected to writing whatever. He's writing the Iron Man mythos for the most part, with Invincible Iron Man and Infamous Iron Man, which are both great, by the way. Check those out. And he's also writing Jessica Jones, just because that's a character that he created. He's also writing SpiderMan, which is just because he wanted to return to Miles Morales, and it's that original creative team, which is just Bendis and Sarah Patel. I cannot talk today. Whoo boy, it's Bendis and Sarah Pacelli. That's what I was trying to say on Miles Morales' book, which is simply titled Spider-Man. So yeah, and so I guess I'll just get my stance out of the way here on this. Should a comic book series or character have the same writer for an extended period of time? Yes and no. The yes comes from the ability to write a cohesive story that has a heavy continuity influence in it without another writer coming in and tarnishing that, or forgetting things that you wrote in the past, or just you not being able to finish things that you set up. And the no comes from that character or series getting stale after a while, or if that writer just doesn't do the character justice and he or she is planning on doing a very long run with the character. If it's bad, everyone's just not gonna like it, and you're just gonna have to live with it because that writer is assigned to that book or series and has a story that they want to tell, and Marvel has greenlit it. Speaking of that, Dan Slott is a writer who has been writing Spider-Man, just the Spider-Man Peter Parker mythos, for years now. He started with Big Time, I believe, and is still going today with Amazing Spider-Man. He ushered in the creation of Silk and Spider-Gwen and pretty much anything new that was brought up in Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse was his baby, was what he was working towards. He wrote Superior Spider-Man, which is great. But now people are people are getting a little bit annoyed with him being the only person to write Spider-Man ever. Mostly because it seems like Dan Slott has a really heavy focus on wanting to age Peter Parker up and make him something other than the bumbling boy who lives with Aunt May, which is fine. I think there's a place for that in Peter Parker's mythos. He should grow up at some point because everyone does. And if you still want, like, the bumbling boy who lives with Aunt May, you can read something like Spidey, which is, it wasn't canceled, I think it just finished. I forget who wrote it, potentially Nick Spencer, but I don't know. Somebody wrote it. It's great. It's just a, like, retcon of his origin-ish type thing. It's just basically a story. It's like a 13-issue run of Peter Parker in high school, and they kind of retcon some stuff and bring his origin into the modern age where they have, like, smartphones and stuff, and that's all fun. You have that in addition to Dan Slott telling his story that he's been telling for years now. But people are starting to get frustrated by that because they don't like where Dan Slott is taking Peter Parker, and he just won't get off the character. And I don't super agree with that. I think Dan Slott's stuff is fine, but it does get me excited when Marvel announces something like, I think it's called Spectacular Spider-Man, which is being written by a different person, and it is basically a solution to Dan Slott's reign over Spider-Man, where it's still this same Peter Parker in continuity. It's not like a younger Peter Parker or an older Peter Parker or an alternate universe Peter Parker or just an out-of-continuity Peter Parker. It is in continuity, late 20s, early 30s something Peter Parker, who is running Parker Industries and everything, but it's just not focusing on that side of himself. It's focusing on a different side. It's not out yet, but it's basically just a Spider-Man story written by a different dude other than Dan Slott, which is, I feel like, what people want. Dan Slott's still there, but you're still getting the story that's not written by Dan Slott. And again, this kind of ties in to the last video. Who cares who's writing it if they're telling a good story? So yeah, Dan Slott is kind of the catalyst that made me want to talk about this subject in particular, mostly because he has been writing Spider-Man for such a long time, and that can get a little bit messy at certain points, but it does allow you to tell a story that you need a very long time to set up, because comics don't come out like every day. They come out every month. One issue, 22 pages generally, comes out every month or every 2 weeks. And when that is the medium you're working in, it takes you a while to tell your story in that medium. So when you only have like a 12-issue run, which is just like 1 year of your story, you can tell a very good self-contained story there. But if you want to set up like longer arcs and stuff, like Ultimate Spider-Man ran for what, like 13 years? Something like that. And there was a lot that happened in that book, and a lot that only could have happened because Bendis had time to set things up into the future. And this makes me want to talk about Secret Wars, which is kind of a touchy subject with people. Some people love Secret Wars, myself included. Some people hate Secret Wars, a lot of people included. And I love it because it was something, it's a good story, but also because it was set up by Jonathan Hickman, and it was his initial plan from, you could see the seeds of Secret Wars being planted from his Fantastic Four run back in like 2007. And it's such a cool thing to me. It's what a writer is so, like, a writer being attached to one mythos or one character is allowed to do. They're allowed to play in this world that they've set up for themselves in a specific time, and once they're done with their story, they'll leave. And that's, I think, Jonathan Hickman's run on Avengers, New Avengers leading into Secret Wars, and then he's done after that. I think that is what the like perfect happy medium between a writer being on a character for longer than a year and a writer being on a character for like forever, like Dan Slott is. Like, I do kind of agree that Dan Slott, not because I think Dan Slott should leave Spider-Man, and I think Marvel might be ramping up to that, but not because he's telling bad stories. I still am enjoying Amazing Spider-Man and everything else that he's created, but because he's been on it for so long, and it feels like there are so many stopping points where he could have let another writer take over, but he just hasn't. So yeah, in the case of Jonathan Hickman, for those that don't know, he wrote Fantastic Four for a while, and then was like, hey, I want to tell my story that I've been wanting to tell for quite a while, the Secret Wars story. but that takes a while to like lead up into, and he was sowing the seeds of it in Fantastic Four, but it hadn't been like greenlit by Marvel yet. So I think the story goes, I don't really remember, he was at a summit, one of their like summits that they do, and was like, hey, I got the story I want to tell, but I need everyone and I need a lot of time. And Marvel was like, okay, go for it. And then he started writing Avengers and New Avengers and started just planting the seeds for that. And then the 8-month time jump with Time Runs Out happened, and then it like reached critical mass and Secret Wars happened, and then he was done. And Bendis kind of took over. It was like the Hickman universe for a while, which some people hated, some people loved. And I do honestly think that a lot of people that didn't like Secret Wars just either read Avengers and New Avengers and didn't like it, or didn't read Avengers and New Avengers. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone that read Avengers and New Avengers, liked it, and didn't like Secret Wars. If you're that person, good for you. But I really enjoyed Secret Wars, and I really enjoyed Avengers and New Avengers. So it was for me. I enjoyed what Hickman was able to set up in that universe, and in his like own little mythos, Avengers, New Avengers kind of thing, and was able to capitalize on it with Secret Wars, which also brought in his stuff that he wrote on Fantastic Four, and I think he also wrote some stuff for Secret Avengers or Secret Warriors or something like that. I haven't read everything that Hickman's done, but it was a cool story that was only possible because he was able to play in his own little playground for a while. And that's what's really important here. Is I think a writer, and I'm kind of regurgitating what I said earlier, but a writer should be able to stick to their one character mythos book, whatever, for a while, as long as they don't overstay their welcome, which I think Dan Slott is kind of doing. And I'm not, it sounds like I'm bashing Dan Slott in particular. I'm not. He's just a good example because he has been on SpiderMan for so goddamn long, which is not a bad thing because he is still telling good stories in my opinion. But give someone else a chance. Spider-Man is a character that I'm sure hundreds of other writers would love to take a stab at. So give him a chance, is what I'm saying. Don't overstay your welcome. Move on to another book. I know it's nice to have like a stable job or a stable character that you can just live with and you just become the dude for that character. But once you're there for like 8 years, maybe take a break. So yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this topic. I could talk about Nick Spencer having like the entire Captain America mythos to his own, and that being a bad thing in some people's eyes because he's a very political person and they don't want politics in their Captain America book. But like, it's Captain America, so and America is like a place that's not in a great spot right now, so politics are going to be in it regardless. That's kind of all I have to say on this subject. At the end of the day, I think a writer should be a writer should be able to own a character for a while, as long as they don't overstay their welcome. So yeah, let's talk about that in the comments, I guess, or on my Twitter somewhere, at AURAM'Alexander. Yell at me, or don't. This is the same bit I did last time. It's unimportant. That's it. Do you think that Dan Slott should leave Spider-Man? Dan Slott, if you're watching this, don't take any of this personally. I enjoy your stories. In the last episode, I gushed about Superior Spider-Man. It's a great story. But like, let someone else play in the Spider-Man Peter Parker playground for a bit. That's it, guys. Do what I said in the last clip. Just do it. Dan Slott, thanks for watching. You're not watching. If you're watching, cool. If you're not, that's cool as well. Bye-bye.